Hello and welcome to Dark Histories. I'm Sarah,
And I'm Josh.
and today we're doing the case of Belle Guness.
Yay, I love beer. Oh, no, wait, Guness?
That is
Guinness.
actually a beer. They do have a beer named Belle Guness.
Do they?
Yes.
Oh,
There is also a black metal band called Belle Guness, who I hate to say it, but quite good.
okay. So, from what I know about this woman, um, she's totally jacked, and whatever. So I'm assuming this is like filled with the hops. Nice, nice.
Okay, but first off, we need to apologise because we've been away.
Yep, we get some. The world's going crazy at the moment, so we've kind
Yes.
of had to deal with our own stuff. But hey, we're back. We're here.
We're
We're here. We got our face masks. Not
here.
that we need them right now, but we do have them.
I'm a bear.
And I just got a mustache. You insert mustache ride joke here.
Oh my god.
Mm,
Okay, so yeah, Belle Guness. Now this is one of my favorites because a bit like H.H. Holmes, she's like a super villain.
she's like a super villain.
Yeah, she is the story's unbelievable.
So if H.H. Holmes is the Riddler, who is Belle Guness?
I'd say the Joker, but she's way too quiet to be the Joker.
Way too quiet. All right. Well, I'm sure after learning about her, we're gonna.
That's why she did so well. She didn't tell people shit.
Yeah, good.
And there are a lot of people that actually think she was inspired by H.H. Holmes because her crimes started just after his.
Okay.
So there was an interesting little time lapse there, and she was in Chicago to start with as well. So yeah, she was born in Selbu, which is in Norway.
Ooh, so she's a Viking.
She is.
Mm.
She was very, very poor. Her original name was Brynhild Paulsdatter Storsit, which is the coolest name ever. Like, the Norwegians apparently had a really awesome, easy way of naming people.
Okay.
And Brynhild was obviously the name chosen by the family. Paulsdatter is Paul's daughter because her dad was Paul, and Storsit was the farm that she lived on.
All right.
Nice, easy way of keeping track.
Yeah, I mean, gonna have a lot of last names like that, but okay. I mean, I've heard more ridiculous or less ridiculous. I had a Cuban buddy named Paz Alvarez or Mario Paz Alvarez.
That's a cool name.
Yeah, it was cool. I think I forget how it was. I believe that his father's name was Paz and his mother's name was Alvarez.
Okay.
And they did that to make sure that everybody knew that they came from that particular name. I'm sure that didn't happen for all of them.
No,
but out of all of the Cubans that I've ever met with that spoke English, he did good. So he did well. So it's not like he was that far off. But all right, so she's from Norway.
Mm-hmm.
She has a really cool last name. And she is a supervillain that you think was, inspired by H.H. Holmes.
Oh yeah, she was. She was definitely one of the smartest serial killers I've ever heard of. But yeah, she was the youngest, I think, of 5 or 6. There was a lot of them.
Okay.
And obviously it was quite hard. She got a nickname from the local children because she gathered twigs, and the nickname basically translated to Paul's twig daughter, which isn't like a horrible nickname, I guess, but
I mean, okay, so that's the best they could come up with.
yeah, apparently they weren't very creative.
Well, I mean, you listen to the last names, it really doesn't seem like they are.
Yeah, but it does seem like she had kind of a rough childhood. Not rough as in like abusive or anything, just they were very poor. They were like the poorest people there.
Okay.
There is a rumor that she got pregnant relatively young, and she was at a dance in 1887 and no 1877, sorry, and that she got kicked in the stomach and miscarried,
Okay.
and this is what altered her personality, etc., etc.
Okay.
We don't know anything much more than that from the early life because it was Norway in the 1800s and they were poor, so it's not like
Yeah,
there's
it's
many records of anything. There's even debate about when she was born because the birth records are so
yeah.
poorly maintained.
Oh yeah, especially in those times.
But we do know that her sister Orlina, who changed her name to Nellie,
Mm.
Nellie Peterson, I believe, moved over to Chicago for a better life. A lot of people apparently were moving from Norway at that time. Chicago was the place where the Norwegians went. You know,
Okay.
it was. So she paid for Brynhild to join her, and she moved over to Chicago in 1881, where she changed her name to Bella.
Okay.
Bella Peterson.
Okay. So does that mean that she's now officially Peter's son?
No.
Well,
I think they just tried to Americanize
Ah,
themselves, and because, like I said, records were very poorly maintained, it seems like you could pretty much just call yourself anything.
okay.
I'm sure they weren't that poorly maintained. I'm sure there were some records of these name changes, but
Probably.
yeah. So we do know that she stayed with her sister to start with. She helped around the house. She was doing like a maid's job for her sister. But obviously that wasn't good enough for Belle. She decided she needed to get married. Her sister would say that she was never interested in the men themselves. She married her first husband just because he could provide her with somewhere to live. And she married him in 1883. Oh, 1884. And he was called Mads Anton Sorensen.
What?
Mads. Mads.
Mads?
Yes.
Okay.
Apparently it's a very common Norwegian name even now.
I don't know.
And sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Mads, she married
Yeah,
Mads something.
Mads Anton Sorensen. I just think the names are cool.
Okay.
I just love how they roll off the tongue.
Yes, yes, as you have to take a pause to say them properly.
Oh,
they
there's
roll
some
off
that
the
are
tongue.
really hard later on. You're going to see me trip up so much.
Okay.
So they got married, and Belle apparently really, really badly wanted children.
Mm-hmm.
She had no time for anyone else, but she loved children.
Yes.
But it seemed like she couldn't conceive. She had a falling out with her sister. I believe they stopped speaking to each other entirely after she'd babysat for her sister's child for a few weeks.
Okay.
On request, she'd asked the sister if she could look after this little girl for a few weeks, and then basically stopped talking to her sister because she refused to let Belle keep her.
Okay.
Like, I'm your sister, so you should let me just have your child.
Yes.
Because that's how that works.
Yes.
And as I understand it, it wasn't Nellie that Nellie understood that she really wanted children. She was sensitive. But Belle was like, no, you won't let me have your child. I'm not talking to you.
Okay. Well,
So,
I mean, that's the logical route to take.
early
Okay.
signs of her being a bit of a psycho.
Yeah.
But eventually...
Bitches be crazy, yo. Yeah, I don't know.
Eventually, she did end up with an adopted daughter called Jenny, who was given to Belle because her mother had been dying, and Belle had said she would take care of the child, when the mother died, and apparently the child's father was just like, okay.
Okay.
He did try to regain custody later, but apparently they went to court and Belle won.
Okay.
So yeah, she has an adoptive child at this point. she's married to Mads, and they buy themselves a little candy store.
A little candy store.
Yeah, which is quite cute. I always think of like candy stores in that time, especially, to be really cute.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Every time I think candy store, I mean, not new age candy store, and I'm always thinking Willy Wonka.
I was gonna say,
I'm
are
always
you
thinking,
thinking
I'm
Willy
always thinking
Wonka?
Willy Wonka because it's like that is the kind of candy store.
Like really cute, like
Yeah,
swirly lollipops
yeah, yeah,
everywhere.
exactly. Before everything was super manufactured, to be
Mm.
like, I mean, look at a Snickers. I have no idea how they do that, but I'm sure there's an episode on YouTube somewhere about it. But
And this is where the crimes started.
oh, at the candy shop.
Yes.
Did she
And
start licking the lollipop?
she started with insurance fraud, and the candy store wasn't making very much money.
Mm.
And one day there was a fire at the candy store.
Oh no.
Whole thing burned down. They got, I think it turned out to be about £100,000 in today's money, like conversion.
Okay.
And they moved away, obviously got themselves another little home.
Okay.
The next thing we hear about Belle and Mads is that they somehow acquired 4 more children.
Okay.
Somehow. These 4 more children came along within 2 years. So unless Belle is,
Popping out twins.
yeah, well, they weren't twins. None of them were the exact same age, and there was, they weren't hers. There is absolutely no way them children were hers. I don't know how they got them. There's no adoption records, no
Okay. Well, they just
anything.
ended up
She just turned up with 4 children.
Okay.
Um,
Did they have shoelaces back then?
I think so, yes.
Really?
Yes.
Did they know how to tie those shoelaces?
Yes.
You sure? Because she be tripping.
Oh, you didn't.
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Sorry, I could not control myself.
No, it's okay. That was quite funny. So, yeah, they have these 4 more children. And then Belle and Mads are victims of a scam themselves.
Okay.
So a man comes to the house claiming to be a prospector.
As you do in where, Chicago?
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I'm a prospector. Yeah.
And offered Mads to go away for a year to prospect for gold. They said, I think it was like 20% of anything you find, you get on top of this regular wage. Part of this regular wage gets sent home to your wife. And it sounded pretty good.
Yeah.
So they were like, right, you start in a couple of months, you just need to get ready, you need these supplies, startup costs, etc. So they got these startup costs together, and of course the job wasn't there.
Okay.
So just after this, they had another fire.
How about that?
Yeah. They apparently burnt down part of the house, but the insurance still paid out. So a bit more money for Belle because she likes the money. Around this time, 2 of the 4 newly acquired children died.
Oh, goodness.
The ruling was that they died of, or is it acute colitis? I'm not sure what that is, but apparently it was quite common for babies to die of that at that time, though it did share some comparisons with strychnine poisoning, which is obviously the method preferred by Belle later on.
Okay,
So
well,
it is possible.
Apparently, acute ulcerative colitis.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Frequent diarrhea, which may be bloody, stomach aches, and needing to go to the toilet a lot. It's usually treated with medicines that reduce the inflammation of your digestive system. Surgery may be needed Okay, so in other words, it seems as if they were lightly poisoned.
It's possible. I believe they were, but there are people that say no, they don't think that she'd started that early. But you do have to remember there were also life insurance policies for these children.
Oh, I'm sorry, there were?
Yeah.
Oh, I figured there
Oh,
were
she
going to
had
be.
insurance policies
Oh,
for
I'm
everything.
sure there were. My goodness.
And then we come to the next recorded death on the list, which is most people believe to be the first conclusive we know Belle did this murder. And Mads had got a life insurance policy which expired on the 30th of July 1890.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd set up another policy that started on the 30th of July because he didn't want to risk the extra day.
Yeah.
So there was one day in Mads's life where he had two life insurance policies covering him at once.
Okay.
One for $2,000 and one for $3,000, which in that time was a lot of money. It would equate to about £150,000 a year.
It's still a lot of money as of today's standards, but go on.
Sorry, dollars, not pounds.
Whatever. You know. I think we get the gist.
And as you've probably gathered, July the 30th, 1890 was the day that Mads died.
Isn't that weird?
She almost didn't get away with this. There was one doctor that was like, this is suspicious, something's happened. He didn't die of natural causes, but Belle got a second opinion from someone, I believe, that was a lodger. So he knew Belle, and he said, oh no, I've been treating him for heart failure. It's something to do with this.
Mm-hmm.
She'd said he'd come home from work, he had a headache. She went to check on him, he was dead. She also made up some excuse about going to the pharmacy for quinine powder. I don't know what that is, but apparently it was quite common to treat things at that time.
No, I ain't no telling.
And Belle said that she thinks the pharmacist had made a little mistake and given her morphine instead of quinine.
Oh, so it's, the first Michael Jackson. The doctor screwed up the prescription.
Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry, I went blank there for a minute. Yeah, that was her excuse, but it's likely, given everything else, that he did die of strychnine poisoning. There was indicators.
Okay.
So now Belle has more life insurance money
Mm.
and no husband.
Ooh.
And 3 children at this point, because she's still got Jenny.
Okay.
So she has a little look around. I believe she put in some ads in places, and she connected with Peter Guness, who I believe she'd known briefly before, but didn't know him really well.
Okay.
And they decided to get married and buy a little farm together in Indiana, in a little village called, well, I don't know if it's a village.
It's not. It would be.
I'm from England.
It would be a town. It would be,
like, it seems like a village to me, because we would call that a village here, but it's obviously not a village.
Yeah. Maybe it was a village back then. I don't know. But
and a quite amusing story I like is that.
What was real quick? What was the village called?
Laporte.
Laporte.
Yeah.
All right. So what, like French?
Yeah, this is the story I was just gonna say.
Okay.
It was called Laporte because the first French settlers that moved there called it that because it translates to the door.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I believe, the easiest place to get to, wasn't it?
Okay.
But they had a mayor at that time that didn't like the French name, wanted to change the French name to Dawesville.
Dawesville. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm kind of glad that didn't happen, because that would have been a bit less intriguing.
Okay. No, America usually has like towns, counties. Well, a county. It's either a county or a city, and then you'll have towns, and it's we don't have villages. When an American thinks village, they think that more times than not they'll think England, and then they'll be like, "Ooh, it's King Arthur and the Round Table, and there's friggin' dragons and shit," And that's where we get the idea from.
So at this point, because this is where we have records of stuff, so this is where I can give more details. And I'm going to give a few more details on Belle. So at this point, Belle was weighing in about 280 pounds.
Big girl.
She was almost 6 feet tall.
Mm.
And apparently, according to locals, she could pick and toss a full-grown pig
So she
into
was
a
super
truck.
jacked.
She was a big, strong woman.
Okay.
Because she
Was
did.
she a strong, independent woman? All right, go on.
I think she's probably one of the most independent women there ever is, really. She would often do all the farm chores herself. You know, she was made famous around, you know, the local community for her sausages. Which, yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I like a good sausage.
They were supposed to be pork sausages. Obviously, she had a pig farm, but there are obviously rumours that they were other things in those sausages.
Well, you know.
They weren't just pigs.
Well, what could they be?
Sorry, I keep losing my train of thought.
Oh,
This is
pork
not going well.
sausages that, you know, rumored to be something else.
There's also, because I'll say my main source for this is the only real kind of, what's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know.
Reliable account
source.
of Belle Guness ever written. That's a book by Harold Schechter, who is really famous, really good, one of my favourite true crime writers.
Okay.
Who delved right in there. He did a lot of research. And the kind of characters that lived in LaPorte at that time are just the most American, stereotypical people you can think of, and they're just great.
Oh, I'd love to hear the stereotypes.
Her neighbors never liked her, I don't think.
Yeah.
She was very quiet, so she didn't really do very much to piss them off, but I think they just always had a bit of a vibe about her. One would describe her as having a frog's face and super tiny feet.
Who's this now?
One of her neighbors.
No.
They described Belle as having a frog's face, and she was really large with grotesquely tiny feet. I believe which is quite funny. She had a neighbor who was called Christopher Christopherson.
That's awesome.
Which is the coolest name ever. And
Chris Christopherson, wasn't that the guy who played in Blade? Yeah, Chris Christopherson. That was the guy from Blade.
I thought there was a singer called Chris Christopherson.
A what?
A singer.
Yeah, that's him.
Oh, is that him?
Yeah,
okay.
Chris. Yeah, American singer songwriter.
But that is the coolest name ever.
Yeah, see, look, that's him. That's Whistler. Okay. Yeah. All right, cool. I'm sorry. That's cool. She has a neighbor named Chris Christopherson.
I should also say, just because I find it interesting, that the farm that Belle and Peter purchased was previously a brothel.
Ooh.
And it was always known as Maddie Altick's place. I believe there were some murders there as well.
Probably.
There was another murderer that lived there before. There's a long history of murder on this.
It was a brothel. There was murders.
On this farm. But yeah, sorry, we'll get more into the story. I just really like I said, as we go along, you'll see there's just some really great people. So the next sort of main event would be, oh, no, I'm forgetting. Pete had 2 children.
Okay.
2 little girls.
Mm-hmm.
And shortly after they got married, the littlest child, I believe she was also called Jenny, died mysteriously.
Okay.
So, yeah, maybe Belle didn't like that one.
It's possible.
I believe later Peter's brother took the other one away because he had suspicions that Belle had killed the child.
Mm-hmm.
And yet then Peter Guness died I think it was in 1902. Yeah, December 1902. Now, this is the best account of a death ever.
Okay.
Right, so obviously the doctor's called Dr. Bowell, I might add. The doctor came round.
I'm listening.
It's
Dr.
a
Bowell.
funny name.
It's hilarious.
So yeah,
Is it spelled right? Bowel? All right, cool.
So Dr. Bowell came round,
Dr.
and
Bud.
after it might have been Chris Christopherson that alerted the doctor, I can't remember. So Dr. Bowell came round and obviously thought there was something very suspicious about the way Peter had died, and Belle's account was that he had burnt himself by, I believe he supposedly leant over to pick his slippers up because he warmed his slippers on the stove, which a lot of people did at that point. And as he leant down, there was a pan of brine boiling on the stove. As he leant down, the pan of brine fell on him, and also, simultaneously, a sausage grinder fell off another unit next to him and hit him on the head.
Okay.
And Belle's account is that he obviously was burnt very badly. He had a headache, as you would do, because the sausage grinder hit you on the head.
Yeah.
And he was like, I just need to lay down. I'll be fine. So he goes to lay down. Belle puts the children to bed, does all that. And then he comes back down, says, "Oh, Mama, I guess I'm gonna die," and instantaneously falls to the ground, dead.
Okay, so all right, so here's what here's my take on this. So she pickled him, whacked him over the head with a friggin' sausage grinder, and okay, yeah, pickled sausage, whatever.
It's just how unbelievable that would be if you
Well,
gave
that
that
last little
as a
statement,
statement to
yeah,
the police now. It's I don't want to
well, it
steal
definitely raised some eyebrows.
I don't want to steal jokes from other people, but there is someone that joked about this being like someone murdering and raping someone and being like, "Oh, I fell over, and wouldn't you know it, as I fell over, my penis just entered him, and he tried to get up but fell back down, and this happened repeatedly
Oh
until
yeah,
I accidentally ejaculated inside him.
yes.
And then as he got up, a shotgun fell, and would you believe it, it landed right in my hand."
Oh, yeah.
That is...
Look what happened all by itself.
Yes. Now, the thing that was curious is there were no burn marks on him. He'd obviously not burned himself at all.
Well,
I don't know where that detail came from. And as well as obviously his skull was smashed in, he also had a broken nose. So none of it really went together. The doctor ordered an inquest, but I don't know if it's just because it was the day and age it was and she was a woman and people just found it harder to believe. Because obviously at this inquest it was brought up that her ex-husband had died of suspicious circumstances.
Yeah.
But somehow it was ruled that he was killed by, an accidental death caused by a sausage grinder.
Well, back in those days, and even today, they view the woman as not using blunt force or anything like that. Now, don't get me wrong.
That's
there
true.
are plenty of women out there that have used guns, and some of the most famous murderers in the world.
Yeah.
But generally, people look at it and say, they were poisoned. If the
Yeah.
man is dead, it's because of something he ate, because she prepared it, because
Yeah.
poison's a woman's weapon. In this case, I mean, she's 280 pounds. She's 6 foot tall. She can chuck a full-grown pig across
The
across a
theory
farm.
is, and I tend to agree with this because I think she really was quite sadistic and she did enjoy the, the bloodiness and other stuff. The theory is that she poisoned them, and then to finish them off, she'd use a hatchet or a meat cleaver
Mm-hmm.
because of statements that the children made to teachers and stuff. I believe one child said that Mummy had murdered Daddy with a meat cleaver.
Okay.
So she'd poison them, and then when it came to the end, she'd just bash their heads in with like.
Yeah, so she pretty much dextered them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
she was.
Not that I actually watched any of that show, but generally dextering them, you poison them, incapacitate them, then you play with them, and then you kill them. That seems about right, especially considering what we already know or have heard about her. I mean, like I said earlier, you think a 280-pound woman, you kind of have to look at it and be like, okay, that's a farmhand. She's not your ordinary woman. Let's look into this a little bit more deeply, especially with a crushed, you know, nose. I mean, look, a 280-pound woman punching you in the face, if she's jacked like that,
Oh yeah.
it's going to break your nose. So
Oh,
obviously
of
there was
course.
a scuffle. She punched him in the face, knocked him out, and then just decided, screw it, let's.
Well, my thought was that she'd obviously hit him over the head with something, whether it was the sausage grinder or the meat cleaver, as the
Yeah.
children had stated, and he'd fallen forwards rather than, as she'd said, he'd come downstairs and he just kind of fell over. Because if you do that, you tend to fall on your back, I think.
Under what circumstance?
Well, just general passing out.
Yeah. Well, it all depends. I mean, you
Yeah,
could.
I guess so.
Well,
But
see,
you don't tend
let's
to
see.
fall in a straight line straight forward, do you? That's a very sort of cartoonized.
Well, yeah. I mean, obviously, if you're going to have trauma to the brain at first, the first thing you do is your legs are going to fall out from under
Mm.
themselves, and you're probably like most people. Here, let me see if I can do it without getting too hurt. Hey, move, Janet. I need you to move. All right. So you take head trauma and standing up straight. First, your knees are going to fall.
Yeah,
Then you're gonna
exactly. You're not gonna
you're
fall.
not gonna fall. You're most likely gonna fall on your side,
Right.
because
Okay.
your legs are gonna give out, and then since you're on your knees at that point, you fall from one side to the other. So yeah, it makes perfect sense to me.
So after Peter died, she had the farm. She was all on her own. We know at some point there was a fire on one area of the farm.
Ooh,
Yeah, obviously she got an insurance payout, but there's not really too much about that.
freaking pyromaniac here.
But yeah, she obviously did all the farm work herself, but she'd started putting adverts in Norwegian newspapers and stuff for help.
Okay.
She hired one man called Henry Gerholt, who was seen by Chris Christopherson, helping out around the farm. He'd
Okay.
seen him for a couple of weeks. She'd introduced him to the neighbours as her cousin.
Okay.
And he just one day had mysteriously sort of disappeared, and she said, oh no, he's gone to wherever. Apparently she had a lot of cousins visit
Okay.
over the years, and every single one of them just kind of vanished.
As they do.
Apparently she had one room, like an entire room in her house that had all the luggage left by these cousins.
Okay.
And that was Emil Greening who had said that, because she eventually hired him. He was a local person. She hired him to help out on the farm, and when she had people working on the farm, she gave them a bedroom in the house.
Yeah.
And yeah, he would say there was just this one room that was full of these trunks, and every now and then she'd have cousins come to visit. Me and the children weren't allowed near the cousins.
Mm-hmm.
They'd stay for 1 or 2 days, and then they'd disappear.
Okay.
And after that, she started, I don't know, she was thinking, well, she was definitely telling the men that she wanted marriage. She put an advert again in the Norwegian speaking newspapers saying, she was a wealthy woman. She had a farm. She wanted a partner to share this with, for some little investment. the letters later on, a few of the letters that were found, she'd obviously told people to bring all their money with them. She'd advised people to sew their money on the inside of their clothes so they didn't lose it and stuff like that.
Okay.
And then Emil would stop working there in 1906. He had a thing for Jenny. He was a young lad. He wasn't like, an adult. But yeah, he had a really good friendship with Jenny. I believe there probably was some romance involved. And apparently one day, all of a sudden, Belle had decided that Jenny was going to go to college in California. Jenny believed this as well. And then, yeah, one day Emil had come round wanting to say goodbye to Jenny because she was supposed to go that evening.
Yeah.
And she'd already gone, apparently, without warning.
Okay.
And that's interesting because I believe it was coming up to Jenny's 18th birthday when her life insurance wouldn't be valid for Belle to get the payout because she wouldn't be a minor.
So in other words, so far all I'm hearing is Belle Guness is a victim of circumstance. Okay.
Oh, she definitely had a lot of tragic events surrounding her.
Yes.
Oh, I forgot about the birth of her last child.
Oh, okay.
6 months after Peter had been murdered.
Allegedly.
Yes. One of the children ran round to a neighbour's house saying, "Come help, Mum's got a baby." That was the words they used.
Okay.
Got a baby. And this person came round, and apparently Belle was hanging clothes and stuff. And she was like, "If you've just given birth, you need to be lying down." And Belle was like, "Oh no, that's how we always do it."
What?
And
While you do your freaking laundry? Man, that is a powerhouse of a woman right there.
She was like, "Oh, Norwegians never go to bed after giving birth." But apparently this child would look a hell of a lot older than a newborn.
Okay.
Like almost bordering on toddler status. So yeah, we can safely assume that Belle didn't actually give birth to this child.
Okay.
Where it came from, I don't know, but she would swear she had and it was hers.
So it's like whenever you I don't know, watch one of those TV shows and they just give birth and that kid's eyes are open. It looks like it's 3 months old. It's like, come on, dude. Like that.
Yeah.
That is a 25-pound baby. You did not push that outside of you.
Yeah.
Like
exactly.
Okay.
Sorry, I'd forgotten that, which is quite weird because it's an amazing story. So yeah, during this time where she wrote these adverts, there was a man called George Berry who left home with $1,500 who was never seen again.
Okay.
There was also a man called Christian Hilkvin who sold his farm for $2,000, gave his forwarding address to his family as, the farm in Indiana. He was never seen again. And the relatives would write to Belle and she'd be like, "No, I've not seen this man." And then we come to the last known victim. There was obviously a lot more victims.
Yeah.
They estimate it at around 40, but could be up to 70.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you never know at that time. It could be.
There are still bodies that haven't been identified.
Yeah, but you think that long ago.
Yeah, no, I know. It's just quite sad.
It could have been anybody at that point.
So Andrew Helgelin. I think it's Helgelin.
Helgelin.
Yeah.
How's it spelled?
Helgelien. I'm like, is it Helgelin or Helgeline? Or...
Where's it written?
There.
Helgelian?
Yeah, I really trip up with that name.
Helgeline? Maybe? Helgeline? I don't know. It's a funny name. To spell, at least.
He was the last person we know of that would go to the farm.
Okay.
she'd started writing to him while she was in a relationship with a local man. Well, not a relationship, I'm not sure what exactly it was, but
What do you call?
the man was called Ray Lamphere,
Mm-hmm.
and he's a very important part of this. He was very scruffy looking. He was an alcoholic, I believe. He'd originally gone to help her with some farm work, but we know that there was some sexual relationship there. And during that time, she'd started writing to Andrew. With her writing was very, very good, actually. There was lots of innuendo in there. Lots of things about cream pudding.
What?
And her stating that she was going to make him cream pudding and who would enjoy this cream pudding. Lots of innuendo in there from Belle.
Oh yeah, gotta love innuendo.
And he was supposed to come over and live with her, but he got unwell.
So wait. Really quick. So there's three things.
Mm-hmm.
Said she was gonna make him cream pudding.
Yeah, there's a lot of cream pudding in
So in other words, she was either gonna turn him into cream pudding, or she was going to make him cream pudding. Right? Which one? Which one was it? Probably, the second one, then the first one.
I'm not sure. After he didn't turn up the first time, she wrote to him and she was like, "Who is going to enjoy my cream pudding?"
Ew.
Yeah, so that was quite funny. But eventually he did come.
Yeah, I bet he did.
But unfortunately for Belle, he didn't bring cash. Oh, sorry. He bought some kind of, I believe it was like a savings bond. I'm not sure how it works in America, but it was something they had to take to the bank, deposit, and then, wait a few days for the money to be available for them.
Okay, so a savings bond is usually like it's an investment. All right, so let's say you buy a $50 savings bond.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you'll spend. I'm not 100% on this because I've only dealt with them for so long in my adult life, but essentially you'll buy one for $25, and then after 10 years, maybe it'll turn into the $50. And the purpose of it is to allow people, especially with war bonds, it'll allow people to help fund the war.
Mm-hmm.
And the old classic, it's like pirate stuff.
Yeah.
If everybody puts this much into it, then the return on investment, they will get what they pillage,
Mm-hmm.
what they get back from it. They'll share however much they put into it plus interest. It was a very smart idea, and obviously there are some risks involved. Like, let's say, for example, in 5 years the whole world goes to shit. Well, you can get your money back, but as long as that bank stands, yeah, that's kind of how that's going to work.
Yeah.
So
So anyway, she took him to the bank thinking, she was going to get this money, and they'd said, "Oh no, it'll be about 5 days." So you can imagine Belle's pretty pissed off at this.
Mm-hmm.
I think by this point she's already poisoned him because she goes back alone, wanting to get the money, saying he's unwell. But obviously they won't give it her without him. So she had to drag him out, and apparently he looked terrible. And I'm going to mention at this point, because it's quite important as well, at this time when Andrew came, Belle had kicked Ray Lamphere out of the guest bedroom and made him sleep in the barn.
Mm-hmm. Filthy animal.
She'd also told him she wasn't allowed to go near Andrew, she wasn't allowed to talk to Andrew, things like that. I believe his exact words were, "She gave me the dickens."
Like Charles Dickens.
Yeah, I don't know what that means, but I find it amusing.
You just think it's funny because it says dick.
Yeah, kind
Okay, go on.
of. So yeah, she dragged him out to the bank. He looked terrible. The bank teller would later say like he looked really, really unwell, and then obviously Andrew disappears.
As you would.
Yeah. Andrew's brother starts to get suspicious because Andrew's told his brother everything, even though Belle's told him not to tell anyone because, they should get to know each other first and it'll be more exciting if it's a secret.
Yes, you do.
But no, Andrew told his brother. His brother writes to Belle. Belle's, I want to know where Andrew is. He disappeared. And I think the brother's pressure must have been mounting up because in April 1908, and I believe Andrew had been killed in the January, so it wasn't that long after, there was a fire. There was the person that she had working for her at that point was called Joe Maxon, and he was in the upstairs bedroom. He managed to get out of the house, alert people to the fact that there was a fire. Everyone came round, tried to get Belle and the children out, but they couldn't find them. And obviously, you know how fires work. There's only a certain amount of time you're going to be able to get in the house.
Yeah.
So they had to wait, and eventually the fire died down, and the bodies of Belle and the 3 remaining children were in the basement, but they were all laid on one bed in a perfect line. And it would later obviously be found that they were poisoning the children's stomachs. And the big thing here is that this woman's body is not believed to be Belle's. There was expert testimony saying that this body, even with the damage from the fire, could only be the body of someone that was, say, 140 pounds, which is obviously a lot smaller than Belle.
Yeah.
And this woman's body was missing a head. So how is a fire gonna remove the whole of the head like that? Is the
No, it's obviously not.
Yeah. So Sheriff Smutzer, yeah,
Lord,
turns up, and it's worth noting he turns up in a brand new red sports car that is worth a hell of a lot more than his wages can pay for. But yeah, he seems like.
And when was this?
1908.
Okay.
He seems to me like a typical American police person at that time.
Oh Lord, let's hear it.
He's got like the funny mustache, and I mean his name's Smutzer. But I don't know. I just, as I read about him, I was just like, yeah, okay. So he turns up and he arrests Ray Lamphere for arson. Because the night before, Belle had gone and bought some treats for the children. And she'd also bought a big thing of kerosene. And she'd told everyone that would listen that she was scared that Ray Lamphere would come and set fire to her house and try to kill her. She'd also got her will rewritten the day before, saying, I'm doing this because I believe Ray Lamphere is going to set my house on fire and kill me.
Okay.
So Ray was arrested, and there was obviously a very long trial because the main thing to establish was this body Belle's. But before we even got to the trial, Andrew Helgeling's brother turns up because he is adamant that something has happened to his brother.
Yeah.
So he goes, no one's heard anything of him, and he just decides for some reason to start randomly digging around the farm.
Yes.
And as he's digging, he finds parts of bodies. And one of these parts of bodies, I believe, was Andrew's head.
Nice.
So he knew that Belle had killed his brother, but there were other parts of bodies. So then people start digging and talking around. Apparently, there was a man called William Brugitsky who was hired to dig holes for Belle, and she would say that they were rubbish pits. And she was very specific about these diameters of these holes, and they had to be 6 feet deep and 6 feet wide. And so anyway, they start digging on the first day, and they find parts of 5 bodies,
Okay.
including Jenny.
Mhm.
And then they find another 6 more bodies on the second day.
Okay.
And then I believe for some reason they just decided to stop digging.
Okay.
They were like, right, we can't cover this entire farm no matter what we do. There's too much. We know she's killed a lot of people. We've got no one else at the moment. Well, no, they did have people suspecting that people were there, but I mean, there's only so much you can do.
Yeah.
So at that point, obviously, it was clear that Belle had killed a lot of people and buried them in the hog pits. So
Which
this,
is, I'm sorry, it
no.
just seems a bit strange. Generally, it's well known.
Mhm.
Or maybe it's not well known anymore. God knows nobody goes outside anymore. But if she had a hog farm,
Mhm.
that's the first thing I would have done.
Oh,
I
she did
mean,
feed some to the
I
pigs,
mean, I'd have
apparently.
fed them all to the
Yeah,
pigs.
I mean, there's theories that she fed some to the pigs. Some others were used in sausages. The thing was, when they found these parts,
Mhm.
they were all perfectly butchered, bled. They weren't just randomly hacked up bits of people.
Well, yeah.
So there are theories surrounding what she did with the bodies, but I guess really, in the end, we don't know.
Yeah, of course
We're
not.
never gonna know.
No, of course not. I just find it ridiculous that you wouldn't just feed the darn pigs. I mean, if you're gonna
Yeah,
if you're gonna kill somebody and you got a hog farm, doesn't it make sense not to spend more money on food?
yeah, no, I believe that she did feed some to the pigs.
Okay.
I'm not sure how exactly it all went.
It wouldn't be hard.
So, yeah, the basis of this trial now was to decide whether Ray Lamphere had set fire to this house and killed Belle, because they couldn't obviously try Belle for killing all these people.
Yeah,
And obviously, if it was found that she was alive,
then they could.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there was loads of evidence from different professionals, and the one thing that came up was her teeth. They were like, her dentist was like, she's got very specific crowns. If we can find her teeth, we know it's her.
Yeah.
So, Sheriff Smutzer, sorry,
Yes. No, that's
I
okay.
find him hilarious.
It is a funny name.
He hires a guy that I believe he sifts for gold or something.
So he's a prospector.
Yeah, he hires one of those people to sift through the ashes
Okay.
of the fire to see if they can find anything of Belle's. And wouldn't you know it, within a couple of minutes, he finds the exact teeth the dentist were talking about.
How about it?
Yeah. It was claimed later that he'd been seen to be handed something by Sheriff Smutzer, and at that point he said, "Oh, I found them."
Okay, so Sheriff Dude's in on it.
Well, this is one theory that isn't actually explored as much as I think it should be. But one theory is that Sheriff Smutzer was in on a lot of it, and because he had this new sports car, he was spending money he couldn't have had, and that he actually killed Belle. Because how else would you have these crowns? Apparently, these crowns couldn't just be removed. You'd have to take bits of the teeth out with them and stuff.
Well, yeah. I mean, you have to take the teeth out with them.
I mean, I'm not sure. I think it does seem quite far-fetched.
Well,
And if you had killed someone, like a few days before, would you go back and pry bits of their teeth out? I'm not sure.
well, if you're smart enough to, if your intention was to kill that person, then you would have done it right then. It wouldn't have been that hard. My next thing is he must have burned down everything. We don't. no skeletal structures. It's possible that that was her. You know, it could have
Yeah.
been a 6 foot tall skeleton with, minus the head.
See, Ray had said that he knew that Belle was killing these men,
Mm-hmm.
and that Belle had asked him to set fire to a house at a certain time, and that the woman was, oh, sorry,
That's okay.
a woman that Belle had hired on the pretense of being a maid, and she'd murdered her and put her body there.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously Belle had gotten away. But because Sheriff Smutzer brought these teeth back, well, these crowns, Ray Lamphere got found guilty. He went to prison and he died of tuberculosis, I believe, two
Oh
years
boy.
after,
Yay, TV.
which is quite sad. I mean, he didn't sound like a good guy. He didn't seem like a stand-up guy. He seemed creepy as hell, to be honest.
Mm.
And I do believe that he was in on a lot of it. I believe that his relationship with Belle was very close in that regard, and that he knew a lot more than.
He was letting on.
Yeah. Later on in prison, he would say that he did. He'd give like a whole story, which is basically the story that I've just given you.
Okay.
And but he also said that Belle wrote to him while he was in prison.
Okay.
So that would then throw the theory, if it's true, of the sheriff killing her out of the water. There is another theory, because there was a lady called Esther Carlson who, I'm forgetting the date now, who later on, anyway, let me just Google this date because I think it's quite important.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really kicking myself right now for not writing it in my notes. Like, I have notes here that's just a list of names and dates, because some of these names especially are hard to get right.
Yes.
Oh, I can't find the date that she got
She got what?
arrested.
Oh, okay. Yay for that.
Right, Esther Carlson was arrested in 1931
Okay.
on charges of poisoning a man. But the whole world would go nuts because they were adamant that this woman was Belle Guness. I'm going to show you some pictures now. So this is Belle Guness around the time of the fire.
Mm-hmm.
This is Esther Carlson. So they're saying that this is what Belle would have looked like, 22 years down the line.
Yeah, I can see that, except for the nose.
And obviously she was accused of poisoning a man. I mean, there is some familiarities.
Similarities.
Yeah, God, that's terrible. And apparently, the one thing that people find curious is that there was a picture in Esther Carlson's possession of 3 children
Okay.
that seemed to look exactly like the pictures we have of Belle's children.
Oh.
So she basically had a picture of Belle's children in her possession.
Okay.
But there's people on both sides of the fence there, because there's people saying there's evidence that Esther Carlson was who she was, so I don't think there is.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think there's much evidence that she was Belle Guness. I think a lot of it is kind of
Coincidental.
wishful thinking.
Yeah.
So really, we have no idea what happened to her. There was a DNA test done in 2008. They exhumed Belle's body.
Mm-hmm.
But that was inconclusive.
Yeah, I'm sure it would be.
At this point, we never know. No one's ever going to know what happened to her. Whether she got away, how many people she actually killed. For me, this story is just mind-blowing.
Okay, so from what I gather so far is,
Well, that's the end, really.
Yeah, no, what I gather is, she someone was on her tail, the brother of that man, and she decided, okay, crap, I'm gonna get caught.
Yeah.
Let me get out of here.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of thing. personally, I'd have been on the side of saying, "Oh, okay, well, Sheriff Smut Dude would have been a
Mm,
part of the whole thing."
yeah.
Having a couple teeth. It's not like they had the whole friggin' mouth to or the whole jaw to
No,
work
that's the
with.
thing. They never found her head.
Well, exactly. You don't know if that was her head. What
No.
I'm saying is, it could have been anything.
Oh yeah.
The body, the headless body aside, the fact that the teeth were in there. I mean,
I mean,
if
at that
I'm running
point,
if I'm running from the law, and I've done something like that, yes, I don't mind taking a freaking taking a wrench to my freaking mouth and pull out a tooth or two, just
yeah.
just to throw people
See,
off.
I have read basically the whole of the trial. I've read the newspaper articles from the trial, the witness statements. Um, there was obviously not a lot of testing back then. There wasn't many ways of getting evidence other than people saying stuff. So, I mean, all we have to go on that this was even Belle's tooth was the dentist saying yes, it is. I mean, it
Yep.
could have easily be that, maybe the sheriff wasn't involved, but he was sick of the whole thing. He'd wanted to get Ray Lamphere for years because he's just a menace, he's always drunk, he's always causing some trouble somewhere. Um, though Ray did have an alibi for that night, a solid alibi, but because at the time, obviously, it's a touchy subject now, but America was very different to how it is now.
Yeah.
And because his alibi was that he was with a black woman, they decided it wasn't reliable.
Okay. Yeah. Well. Yeah. World's definitely changed a lot, but
Um,
I still can't think of what kind of supervillain she'd be.
I don't know. There's just so much things about her that I find make her more interesting than so many other people. Like, for instance, she didn't associate with anyone. She didn't tell anyone anything. She did not leave a weak link anywhere.
Hmm.
To the point where no one has any idea what happened to her,
Mm-hmm.
like ever.
Okay.
And
Well,
it's just
no one for sure
no.
knows. I mean, you can know without knowing, but you can still. I mean, you're just speculation at this point.
Yeah, it's to me, it's just crazy. I mean, I have often said that I can see why there are a lot of serial killers in America that have farms. I feel like it'd be easier to be a serial killer in America than it would here because of the amount of farms and private land.
Mm. And the fact that you know, um, well, in England, people can just, or the cops can just come into your house whenever they want. Uh,
Well, it's not quite that simple, but
well,
it comes
from
down to
what
it,
it's been
yeah.
explained to me is they can, they don't have to have a warrant to come search your house.
They're supposed to, but the thing is, they can get a warrant very damn quickly here.
Well, see, you have to actually have
Mm.
a reason for the warrant, and probable cause ain't that. You have to have
Oh no,
like,
here probable cause is
you,
fine.
you need to, like, let's say you have 100 acres of land over in America, which is not very uncommon, for southern and western. I mean, you're not going to see that up north that often, but
Hmm.
you know, Midwest, western part of the world, southern part of the U.S., you pretty much have all this land, and you can do whatever you want on that land, and unless something has connected, like someone dies or something, and they connect you to it
Hmm.
to a point where a judge says, okay, that for sure, or, blah,
Yeah,
then yeah, then they say, hey, I'll get a warrant, whatever.
exactly.
You
That's
know,
what I mean. It's like a murderer's dream, you know.
oh no,
Um,
you will get caught. It's not, I'm not saying that if you own land, you can get away with anything. I'm just saying that it makes it a little bit harder to get the warrant because they can't just come snoop around on your land. It's privately owned property.
but yeah, I
So,
think it's the mystery for me. I read about this case first. I think I would have been about 16, 17.
mhm.
And I've always just been obsessed with it. I mean, a bit of self promotion here. I'm trying to write a novel based around this case because I've always just it's so fascinating to me.
Yeah, I can see that.
It really is. I'm also gonna do a tarot reading of this case at some point soon that we will put up. You can also, if anyone wants, get a personal reading with me if you search for Sarah Lee Tarot on Facebook. And unless you've got anything, we can end there.
Well, thanks for listening.
And sorry for the self-promotion.
Oh no. Self-promotion on YouTube. Anything but
I
that.
know, right?
I know you guys can't see this.
Download Raid Shadow Legends now.
Oh God, help me. No. No, I refuse. I know you can't see me here right now, but the back of my wrist is on the top of my forehead. Oh, anything but self-promotion. All right, guys. Y'all have a good one. And thanks for
Bye.
listening in.